Before we begin this video, I recorded the audio while I was outside. And as you can imagine, a few background noises did get caught up, such as car noises, the dogs that kept barking at each other and so on. Not my dogs, but just the dogs of the area. However, I am going to do my best with the audio so you can still understand and hear what I'm saying. Anyways, I hope you enjoy it, and let's get to it. Now, it would be important to discuss the difference between autism and Asperger's syndrome. Although they are in the same spectrum, they are not the exact same thing. The main difference between Asperger's and autism is that Asperger's generally features less severe symptoms and more higher functioning. Despite no longer being a separate diagnosis, as far as I remember correctly, Asperger's remains an accurate description of the symptoms and characteristics of some people on the autism spectrum. You can think of it in terms of severe and minor autism. Asperger's and autistic individuals that are high functioning to the point where unless they themselves show it to you, you would never understand that they're autistic, unfortunately do suffer from a lot of alienation. Obviously, this doesn't go for every single one of us, but for a big chunk of us, this is usually the case. Personally, I suffered from alienation quite a bit back when I was still in school, college, and so on. You feel like you just don't belong, mainly because your interests, your level of intensity towards those interests, and this combined with not understanding social cues can, as you can imagine, make you feel very out of place, like a sore thumb, which causes you to feel very alienated and not getting a sense of belonging. Communities that are highly accepting, or communities that are practically speaking built by other neurodivergent individuals, as you can imagine, immediately they become a bit of a secondary home for people. It's kind of why I fell in love with the furry fandom. The first thing that got my interest was the anthropomorphic characters, which as a child, I grew up with anthropomorphic characters in media. So that's what first got me interested. But what kept me staying was the acceptance and feeling like I actually belong, because a lot of people in the furry fandom are autistic or Asperger's. I do have a video discussing why furries and autism is able to mix with each other so well. So I'm not gonna, repeat my the same points. You can go ahead and watch that video if you want to. Now, of course, make no mistake, the furry fandom isn't the only one like this. Thankfully, there are other groups and fandoms that are actually just as great for autistic people. It's about finding it. Autism has multiple levels to it. And unfortunately, some individuals have such a powerful autism, so to speak, that it genuinely does cripple them in life. I'll go ahead and explain how so. And for some of us, autism, as well as Asperger's, is a minor case. Hence why we are able to, over time, learn and memorize how social interactions go, and thus, thanks to this, we are able to make things work. When I was a kid, eye contact was a bit of an issue. However, as time went by, I got therapy for it, and my parents were very supportive and helpful of it, to the point that as time went by, I started to become more and more comfortable doing it, to the point where I can actually maintain eye contact now. Another big issue was making friends, because I didn't get social cues. Like, for example, if I remember correctly, there was this one kid in my class that was, trying to interact with me. And my autistic ass decided that the best way to try and forge a friendship would be talking about dinosaur physiology. To give you the example, right? This was back when I was in college. The base thing that I understood about socializing is that you want to go ahead and show the interesting side of yourself, or show a side of yourself that in general is on the positive side. Since, that's how you make friends. You don't make friends by being an asshole, so try to be nice. My autistic ass decided to interpret that as try and talk about dinosaur physiology with them. In college, where nobody gives a fuck. Yeah, it didn't go well, as you can imagine. But of course, at the time, that's how you kind of try and understand it. Like, you get that when you're socializing, you're trying to show a side of yourself that is either interesting or positive. And I interpreted that as talk about something that you have an autistic level interest in and you have a decent amount of knowledge about, which at the time was dinosaurs because I was a dinosaur kid growing up. Jurassic Park was my childhood. And yeah, it didn't go on very well, as you can imagine. This is a bit unrelated, but when I say Gangster's Paradise Raptor, if you know the exact video I'm talking about, we're pretty much spirit kin at that point. I'm just saying. And we're very old. Yeah, it didn't go off very well, as you can imagine. But when you're autistic, obviously, that one thing that you have an autistic obsession over, you make the accident of making it your entire personality. Because that's what you're really good at. And obviously, you want to showcase something that you're good at. Nobody wants to showcase a picture of them when they were looking ugly. They want to show you a picture of when they looked good. It's basically that, but for social situations. Because we understand that, you showcase a good side of yourself to get things rolling, but we can accidentally make it a bit too far obsessive to the point where people they just don't really get it and they start to exit. They get bored of it as well. And you can become so intense about this, but also get so excited that somebody is willing to actually listen to your autistic ramblings that you forget to stop and give them a moment to speak as well. So it just goes on and on and on and on and on. Like, yeah, if you couldn't tell, this was a big mistake that I used to make. But like I said, thankfully, for a decent chunk of us autistic and Asperger's folk, we aren't on the crippling level of it. And as such, we can slowly but surely begin to educate ourselves and adapt accordingly. And here's a reminder for others. Autism is not an educational disability. Sorry, I meant learning disability. It's not a learning disability, it's a social one. That is the biggest difference. Autistic people, see, take a look at a lot of geniuses, a lot of people that were so intelligent that they literally changed the course of history for mankind as a whole. A lot of them were not normal. Some of them were simply just a bit odd. Some of them were autistic. Some of them had Asperger's. Some of them were within the spectrum. A lot of these people were not quite normal people. Now, keep in mind, this is not to say that every single Asperger's and autistic person that you will meet will be a super genius. No, we can be just as dumb as anybody else. It can happen. It's just that because autistic people don't invest their mental capabilities to social things, they are able to invest it in other things. You would be surprised at just how much brain power and capacity socializing takes. Like, we tend to underestimate it, but even something as simple as a lie does take some level of social understanding and deception skills, especially convincing ones. So this isn't to say that us autistic and within the spectrum individuals are some pure, incredibly intelligent genius angels or something. No, we can be just like anybody else. We can be assholes, we can be stupid sometimes. It completely depends. But like I said, this is a bit of a generalized discussion and not something that goes into every single specific minute detail. So, dear viewer, if you happen to be Asperger's or autistic, understand that a lot of us do understand how it feels. Especially how it feels to feel alienated. Feeling like you don't quite belong or something just isn't quite right about you or something like that. Understand that a lot of us share that exact same feeling. But thankfully, there are communities out there that are actually good for autistic individuals, as well as Asperger's individuals. And I would highly recommend that you would, go ahead and start interacting with said communities and maybe even join them in order to help that social need of yours. Obviously within reason. You know, don't just join a group or a fandom and then dedicate your entire fiber to it, but you know, get the social needs done, essentially. And always remember, there is nothing wrong with being autistic or Asperger's. It is literally like being born with brown or black hair. It is something that just happens. Sometimes you're born with blonde hair. Sometimes you're born with black hair. You know? That doesn't exactly make anyone inferior or superior to anyone. It's just circumstances. That's just how things be sometimes. So understand that no matter who you are, you deserve the same basic human decency, respect, and appreciation as everybody else. Thank you for listening, and I will see you some other time. Goodbye.